I never thought a millionaire would find love in a poor cleaning lady, but fate had other plans. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was the kind of day that started with a bitter chill in the air, the sun struggling to break through dark clouds. I stood there, trembling, broom in hand, heart racing. It felt like the world was watching, judging. I was just Clara, the girl in the shabby uniform, with dreams that seemed as far away as the stars. I was cleaning the penthouse of Thompson Tower, a building gleaming with the power and wealth of Marco, a so-called millionaire. The man who could buy anything except, perhaps, a moment's peace or a sense of purpose. As I dusted the glass-top tables, the silence echoed like a trap, broken only by the sound of my rag against polished wood. I felt small, invisible, caught in a web of inequality. Moments turned into hours, and I stole glances out the grand windows. The city sprawled out below, a vibrant chaos. People laughed, rushed, lived so different from my life. I missed my small apartment filled with books, my mom's warm smile, and those late-night talks filled with hope. Then came the moment that changed everything. A quiet knock disrupted my thoughts. I opened the door, and there he stood. Marco. His presence was electric. Tall, strong, and enveloped in cologne that made my heart stumble. His eyes, deep brown like molten chocolate, held a curiosity that paralyzed me. He spoke with an effortless charm, asking me about the view, the skies that refused to part. Our eyes locked, and I felt something shift. My heart raced, palms slick with sweat. But could I really even speak to a man like him? A guy who had the world in his hands? My lips trembled. Could he be real? As he smiled, I caught a glimpse of a man trapped behind success, burdened by expectations. He looked like someone searching for a place to breathe. Just as he began to share his thoughts, his struggles, something crashed outside, shattering the hesitation, and it sent a jolt down my spine. We rushed to the balcony to see chaos unfolding below. A car accident. Screams. Sirens. My stomach twisted. Would everything be okay? Marcos turned to me, eyes wide. This world, it's all so fragile. He looked so sincere, so lost, and I felt the aching pull. Was he truly as lonely as I felt? And right then, amidst the chaos, the connection was undeniable. I wanted to know more about him, but how could a cleaning lady even dare to hope? I stepped back, heart pounding. Something unspoken hung between us. But just before I could gather the courage to speak, a phone buzzed, cutting through the moment like a knife. He glanced down, a shadow crossing his face. Something was wrong. The warmth in his eyes flickered like a candle in the wind. What is it? I breathed. Instead of answering, his tone shifted, steely and urgent. I need to go. It's important. As he walked towards the door, my heart sank. Was that it? Was our moment gone before it even began? The cold reality washed over me. Wait. I called, desperate. He paused, looking back, tension crackling in the air. I wanted to shout all the words fighting inside me, everything I never knew I wanted. But they lodged in my throat. How could I show a man like him my world? Clara, he said, softer now, we can talk later? Then, just like that, he was gone, the door clicking shut between us. I stood there, heart heavy, wonder choking me. What could he have meant? All I could think of was his haunted expression as he left me in silence. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air was thick when I returned to my small apartment that evening. The familiar, faded scent of old books and something slightly burnt inner from the night before wrapped around me like a thin shroud. My mom would be here, her voice breaking through the fog that had enveloped my mind after seeing Marco. At least, that was the plan. But she was gone. A trip to the store turned into an endless wait as night fell. I was left with my swirling thoughts, the cold reality of our situation bringing a bitter tang to the back of my throat. I wandered into the cramped kitchen, my fingers brushing against the wood of the old countertop. I had once envisioned a life that was more than cleaning penthouses and trying to make ends meet. I stared at my reflection in the darkened window, a ghost of the girl I used to be. Who was I kidding? Marco and I were worlds apart. But those brown eyes, full of longing and pain, haunted me. I could almost feel the warmth of his presence again, and for a fleeting moment, I pictured what it'd be like to escape this tiny reality. To be more than the cleaning lady. With a shuddering breath, I turned away, feeling tears welling. My heart, once again, teetering on hope, wrestled violently with the fear of disappointment. The world was a cruel jester, and I was its ongoing punchline. Just then, my phone buzzed. I picked it up hesitantly, desperate for distraction. The screen lit up with a message from a number I didn't recognize. Clara? If you're free, please come to the Lavender Cafe. I need your help. My grip on the phone tightened as a wave of confusion washed over me. The Lavender Cafe was a tiny spot known for its warm pastries and hot chocolatier, comfort zone I often shared with my mom. And yet, who was asking for my help? Anxiety trailed a finger down my spine, scratching at the remnants of my day. Steeling myself, I decided to go. What did I have to lose? As I walked down the street, a chill hit my cheeks, but I didn't turn back. Each step felt heavier than the last, my heart an orchestra of hope and dread playing in discord. When I finally arrived, the cafe glowed with a welcoming warmth. Strange, flickering lights danced overhead, and the aroma of freshly baked goods enveloped me in embrace from a world that felt far too distant. My heart raced as I pushed through the door, the familiar jingling of the bells signaling my entry. The cafe was nearly empty, save for a few scattered patrons, and my eyes quickly zeroed in on the solitary figure in the corner booth. Marco. My breath hitched in my throat. Why was he here? The urgency in that initial message toyed with my mind. He looked up as I approached, his brow furrowed and tension pulling at the corners of his mouth. I slid into the opposite seat, my heart pounding wildly. I'm sorry to drag you out here, he began, his voice low but strained. I didn't know who else to call. What's going on? I asked, glancing around nervously as if the walls could hear. He sighed, running a hand through his tousled hair in a gesture of exhaustion. It's my father. He wants to take control of the company again. I thought I could handle things, but everything's falling apart. I don't want to be the man he wants me to be. His gaze was distant, like he was gazing through a murky window at a world he couldn't bear to face. It was heartbreaking. Here we were, caught in our respective storms. He, the millionaire with millions in wealth yet burdened by legacy, and I, losing my family to hunger where love once bridged hope. Marco, I started, but he cut me off. I need someone who understands what it's like to feel trapped, Clara. To fight against expectations. Can you help me? The vulnerability in his voice shook me, pulsing with fear and longing. Help you? How? I replied, dizzy with confusion. Be real with me, he said, leaning forward, desperation etched across his face. Tell me if I'm making a mistake. Tell me about your life. Your dreams. In that moment, a flicker of bravery ignited within me. Words spilled out of my mouth like a dam breaking, unearthing everything I had stored away, the dreams I had tucked behind a veil of survival. Our shared silence filled the cafe, stretching time into a sacred space where our souls connected. But just as hope began to cradle the space between us, the cafe door burst open with a furious jingle, letting in a gust of wind and a man wrapped in heavy winter gear, his face obscured. I turned, instinctively shielding myself from the cold rush of reality, and then gasped. Marco! The man yelled, his voice sharp like ice. You need to come home now. Your father has been taken ill. It's serious! The world around us imploded in that instant. Marco's expression twisted from concern to panic. My heart plummeted. This was it, the moment I feared would bring crashing uncertainty. Wait, what do you mean? he stammered, standing up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. But my eyes were locked on the stranger, a new dimension revealing itself in this jigsaw of a life unsought. I felt as if I were watching a train racing toward a cliff, the ground beneath me shifting with every passing moment. Your father, he collapsed. We need to go now, the man insisted, urgency lacing his every word. As Marco turned back to me, I melted deeper into the tension crackling between us, uncertainty anchoring me like an unyielding anchor. He began, but the words faded behind a shadow of lost moments. With his eyes no longer on me, the brief connection we had felt like a dropping leaf in an autumn whirlwind. And just like that, he was gone, driven away by the uncertainty of his world, leaving me with a sinking feeling of abandonment and fear that twisted my insides. The quiet that enveloped the cafe after Marco's abrupt departure felt stark and unsettling. I remained seated, a statue caught in an emotional tableau, the remnants of our stolen moment disintegrating into echoes of confusion. The warmth of the cafe began to dim, replaced by an icy grip of solitude that seeped into my bones, overtaking the pastry-sweet scent swirling around me. I glanced down at the tabletop, still busy tracing the prints of my fingers where they had rested moments before. The reality of my existence bore down on my chest. What was I even doing here? Beneath the bewildering world of wealth, Marco was just a man tethered to expectations and familial obligations. And I, a girl who wiped away the remnants of others' lives, found herself dreaming of a life she could never grasp. I forced myself to take a breath, hoping to dispel the disbelief lodged in my throat. But as the minutes ticked by, my hope grew tenuous, fraying like the edges of an old cloth. People passed by me, murmuring, laughing, as if nothing had happened. I felt like an interloper in this quaint sanctuary. My heart beat wildly in a symphony of fear and longing. I finally pushed myself off the chair, my body moving on autopilot as I stepped back into the frosty night air. The streets were dim, lit only by the scattered glow of lampposts. A shiver trickled down my spine, but I didn't head home, not yet. I needed to move, to find some form of solace among the streetlights and shadows. As I walked, my mind spiraled back to Marco. What did I really know about him? Beneath the allure of his lifestyle, I could see the flicker of a desperate soul caught in a gilded cage. A cage that I had only seen the surface of, yet one that felt achingly familiar. I thought of my mother and our struggles, the crushing weight of the bills piling on the kitchen table, the uncertainty of tomorrow looming overhead like a storm cloud. In a fleeting moment of clarity, I lingered on the idea that perhaps, just perhaps, his burdens mirrored mine. The chains of duty, expectations, the longing for a life freed from the oppression of circumstances. Was that a bond strong enough to bridge our worlds? I found myself veering toward a small park, a patch of stark grass lit by the silvery glow of the moon. I often came here to think, to escape. Beneath a solitary bench, I spotted an old book, its pages worn and weathered. Drawn to it, I picked it up and wiped off the dust. The Alchemist was written across the front in delicate gold lettering. My heart fluttered, it was a sign. Flipping through the pages, I felt my heartbeat synchronize with the words of the story. It spoke of dreams, of chasing one's personal legend. For a moment, the idea embraced me, wrapping me in hope. Was this the message I needed? To chase my own dreams despite the shadows lurking behind me? Just as I was lost in thought, my phone buzzed again, shaking me from my reverie. This time, it was a photo message from an unknown number. Hesitating, I opened it, my breath hitching. There, frozen in time, was a picture of Marco, standing close enough to a hospital bed that I could see the worry carved into his features. A man in a white coat stood beside him, two figures that spoke of urgency in the sterile, cold light. The message followed: Marco is at St. Vincent's. They don't know if his father will make it. Panic gripped me, twisting into a knot. I hesitated before typing back. My fingers hovered above the screen. Do I go to him? What can I say? But fear fought my instincts. If I were to offer any comfort to him, it needed to be now. I did not want to be the specter haunting that night. Before my resolve could crumble, I made my choice. I hurried toward the hospital, my heart pounding with urgency. Each step echoed the uncertainty that tied us together, The void that opened between us when he left the cafe. I pushed through the automatic doors of St. Vincent's, my senses heightened, absorbing the sounds of hurried footsteps and urgent whispers. The air felt fraught with tension, punctuated by the beeping of machinisa sound that hinted at both hope and despair. As I rushed toward the main reception, anxious thoughts clouded my mind. What if I couldn't help? What if showing up complicates his world instead? But the image of Marco, worry etched on his brow, propelled me forward, igniting the will to be there for someone who had, perhaps unknowingly, stepped into my life and reignited parts of me I thought were extinguished. I finally caught sight of Marco, leaning against the wall, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his eyes glassy and unfocused. My breath caught in my throat once more, and I approached cautiously, determined to bridge the gap that had opened so abruptly between us. "Marco," I whispered, my voice shaking as it left my lips. He looked up at me, surprise flickering through the cracks of despair. For a heartbeat, our worlds collided, worlds filled with tangled dreams and unspoken emotions. And just then, a doctor appeared, stepping in between us. "Mr. Sandoval?" The man's voice was steady, but the weight of his presence seemed to suck all the air from the room. Marco tensed, the moment crumbling under the strain of uncertainty. I felt just as lost as he must have, as my own heart beat wildly in anticipation of news we both dreaded. Would it be a tragedy, or would it spark the hope we so desperately clung to? I stood frozen, unsure of which road lay ahead. Would this moment be the final curtain on our connection, or the prelude to a journey neither of us could yet fathom? The air in the hospital was thick, and as the doctor's voice echoed in my ears, time seemed to slow down. I could see Marco's pain etched deeply in the lines of his face, his vulnerability naked and raw. It ignited a strong wave of emotion within me, a sudden resolve to stand by him, no matter how hard the currents of fate swirled around us. The doctor turned to Marco, his clipboard clutched tightly against his body. "I need you to come with me, we need to discuss your father's condition." At those words, Marco's features sharpened into a mask of dread. His eyes flickered past the doctor, searching for solace that wasn't there, locking onto me momentarily, a fleeting moment of connection before he stepped away, drawn into the chaotic demands of family, duty, and impending grief. Hoping to be a comfort amidst his turmoil, I followed them down the sterile corridor, my steps heavy but resolute, each beat a reminder that I was willing to be part of this moment, however devastating. I could feel the weight of the circumstances pressing on my shoulders, the struggle of being an outsider intruding on his world, but I also chased the flicker of hope that perhaps this connection could blossom into something beyond. As the doctor opened the door to the small conference room, a flicker of frustration whipped through my chest at the idea of being pushed outside. The walls were bare, painted in shades of clinical white, much like the emotions I feared I'd have to cloak myself in soon. I half turned to go, unsure if I had overstayed my welcome, when Marco's pained voice broke through the silence. "Please," he called out, his eyes imploring, "just don't leave." I stepped into the room, feeling the gravity of the situation limit my movement, as though the air itself had condensed around our fears. The doctor nodded and closed the door, leaving us alone in the vast arena of uncertainty. "Your father is stable for now," the doctor said, his voice a careful blend of professionalism and empathy. "We need more tests to fully assess his condition. But the prognosis isn't optimistic." Those words hung in the air, and I felt Marco stiffen, the tension in his shoulders manifesting as a visceral fight for control. I wanted to reach out, to pull him into a hug, to shield him from the encroaching shadows, but the moment felt fragile, and I remained rooted to the spot, paralyzed by the weight of our shared pain. "Why didn't I get here sooner?" Marco whispered, barely audible, his gaze dropping to the floor, as if searching for answers among the scuffed tiles. "Sometimes, life doesn't give us the option to be prepared," I murmured, my heart aching to connect with him. "You're here now. That's what matters." He looked up, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears, a soft vulnerability creeping through the cracks of his typically stoic exterior. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, a raw edge to his voice. "I was chasing something that feels so trivial now. The revelation of his uncertainty struck me like a bolt of lightning. This man who rarely faltered in a world of affluence and expectations was grappling with the immense weight of loss. I took a small step closer, closing the distance, offering silent support. Maybe it's not trivial. Maybe what you're doing is just as valid as anyone else's struggles, I said gently, hoping to share the weight of his burdens with my own understanding. Chasing dreams is hard when life keeps throwing obstacles in our way. His eyes met mine, a flicker of recognition, a glimmer of understanding bridging the final chasm that had separated us. Just as a semblance of hope began to weave through the sorrow, the door swung open again, the doctor returning with a clipboard in hand. "Marco," he said again, his professionalism unwavering, "we need to start treatment. I assure you that we will do everything we can." Marco nodded, a slight tremor in his jaw, and as the doctor moved closer, I stepped back into the shadow of the doorway. My heart was pounding as the gravity of the moment resumed its hold. Here I was, a cleaning lady caught in a world of millionaires staring at the fragile threads that could build our connection, each taut with the stress of reality. As they discussed plans and treatment options, I felt like a ghost, watching as he navigated this tumultuous sea. But there was also a spark of determination igniting within me. Maybe I could be a light for him in the darkness. Perhaps, amid the chaos, we could redefine our paths together. Once the doctor concluded, I saw Marco's demeanor shift, resolve settling upon him like armor. I wanted to tell him he wasn't alone, that I would be there every step of the way. Yet in that moment of clarity, my phone buzzed again. Hesitating, I pulled it out, and a frown furrowed across my brow as I stared at the screen. It was a message from the unknown number again, and the chilling words sent an unsettling shiver down my spine. "Your presence isn't welcome, stay away from Marco." The warning echoed in my mind, drowning out the brave beat of my heart. Fear intertwined with hope, wrapping tightly around me as the light in the room dimmed somehow, leaving me teetering on the edge of something dangerous. I looked back at Marco, who met my gaze, a question hanging on the air. Would I dare cross the line laid before me? Would I risk everything to be the person he needed, or would I retreat, bound by the shackles of uncertainty and the invisible forces trying to pull us apart? In that moment, I realized the battle was just beginning, not only against the looming threat upon Marco's family but against the very chains that sought to bind our lives to the expectations of others. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold my ground. The quiet settled heavily on my shoulders as the weight of the warning message crushed my heart anew. I stood frozen, the sterile scent of the hospital mixing with the sharp pangs of fear that gnawed at my insides. Marco's eyes searched mine, a world of emotions swirling between us: confusion, anger, and an intoxicating hint of desperation that made my breath hitch. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etching deeper lines into his brow. The sincerity in his voice sliced through my anxieties, unraveling the knots that bound my heart. "Yeah, just my phone," I said, fumbling for words. "I received a message." His eyes narrowed, suspicion creeping into his expression. "From who?" I hesitated. How could I explain a message that threatened our fragile bond when I wasn't even sure of its meaning? It felt wrong, almost cowardly, to dump that burden on him, especially now. "Just a spam message," I finally said, forcing a reassuring smile that didn't quite touch my eyes. Marco nodded, a flicker of frustration passing across his face as the weight of his familial crisis reasserted itself. "Guess we are both dealing with our own demons," he murmured. Before I could respond, the door swung open again, and a nurse entered, her presence both a relief and an intrusion. She began explaining the next steps of Marco's father's treatment, the jargon spilling forth like a torrent, and I stood to the side, feeling increasingly like an outsider. I watched Marco as he absorbed the information, clenching and unclenching his fists in a rhythm that echoed deep inside me. "Do you want me to stay?" I asked softly when the nurse stepped out momentarily, and he turned to face me. "Can you?" He looked so vulnerable at that moment, as if the walls that usually encased his emotions were cracking under the pressure. "I just need someone." "I'm here," I promised, stepping closer, feeling the distance between us diminish in a way that sent a warm flush through my chest. The minutes stretched into hours as we exchanged stories of less complicated times, memories of laughter shared over coffee in the little cafe where we first met, whimsical tales of childhood adventures colliding with Marco's privileged upbringing. It was comforting, as if weaving a tapestry that would shield us both from the dark clouds gathering outside the hospital walls. Hope flickered amidst the chaos, until my phone buzzed again, a cruel reminder of the uncertainties that lingered outside our bubble. The pitter-patter of messages seemed relentless. I could hardly stave off the rising tide of dread. But I tucked it away, determined not to let it tarnish our moment. As night settled in, the fluorescent lights hummed with a sterile glow. Marco's eyes gradually grew heavy, fatigue drawing lines across his features, but an undeniable spark of something more ignited between us as our hands brushed together, delicate, uncertain, yet electric. Just when I thought the atmosphere was settling, the door swung open once more, and a tall figure strode in with an air of authority that felt daunting. I could see the resemblance immediately. Marco's brother, Alejandro, with the same sharp features and deep-set eyes, stepped into the room. The moment their gazes met, a tense silence enveloped the space, heavy with unsaid words. "Marco," Alejandro said, voice a low rumble, laced with concern that felt almost misplaced amidst the air of animosity. "I've been trying to reach you." Marco straightened, and the flicker of warmth between us dimmed. "Now's not the time, Alejandro. Don't be reckless. You shouldn't be alone in this." Alejandro's gaze shifted momentarily to me, appraising. "And who is she?" "I'm here for him," I said before Marco could respond, feeling the need to establish my place, to stand strong in the face of familial judgments. "We're friends." "Friends?" Alejandro echoed, his tone laced with skepticism. "I thought I was clear when I said you should focus on family. Maybe you should listen to him, Alejandro," I pressed on, surprising myself with my own conviction. "He needs support, not judgment. You of all people know that." Marco's eyes widened in surprise, a hint of warmth flickering with gratitude, yet the tension in the room crackled with uncertainty. Alejandro regarded me silently, and I couldn't read his expression. Was it dismissal, or something more sinister? I sensed that each moment of silence drew tighter, like a noose around my throat. "I just want what's best for him," Alejandro finally said, the edge in his voice softening slightly. "Family's everything in times like these." "With family like yours?" I began, but Marco stopped me, squeezing my hand. "It's enough for now, let's just focus on Dad," he said, his eyes pleading with his brother. The exchange felt precarious, threading on the edge of a chasm that threatened to swallow us whole. But then the phone buzzed again, the sound jolting me back to reality. I shook my head and glanced at it, my heart stuttering as I read the newest message. "Don't let her fool you, Marco. The truth isn't what it seems." Panic clawed its way back through the slivers of hope I had gathered, each message reinforcing the walls that divided us. I looked up to see Marco's troubled gaze drift between me and his brother, uncertainty pooling like clouds overhead, dark and ominous. "Who's sending you this?" Marco pressed, his voice barely louder than a whisper, slicing through the frantic emotions that surged within me. "I don't know," I started, but the truth slipped away, tangled in the rising chaos around us. Marco stood, feet solidly planted, but the vulnerable flicker from earlier faded beneath the weight of shadows creeping in around us. He looked between Alejandro and me, the sense of urgency wrapping around him, binding him tighter. And just like that, all that had hovered on the precipice of our fragile connection hung in the balance, brittle as glass, ready to shatter at the slightest tremor of doubt. The air in the room felt electric, charged with the unspoken tension. I couldn't ignore the heaviness that settled in the pit of my stomach, especially as Marco's brow furrowed deeper, his face shifting from concern to something more complex: fear, confusion, the unmistakable pang of betrayal. "I need to know who's sending you these messages," he demanded, his voice steady yet laced with panic. It was the first time I had seen the cracks in his facade widen over this. I hated being the cause of it. The last thing I wanted was to add weight to his already burdened shoulders. "I swear I don't know," I replied quickly, my voice shaky despite my attempt to sound convincing. "I didn't ask for any of this." Marco's gaze hardened momentarily, reflecting the internal battle that waged within him. You're involved in something you don't even understand, and that scares me. Those words struck like a slap, resonating through me with an unbearable truth. I thought back to the message I had received, a lingering doubt that had coiled around my heart like a serpent. Was I, in some way, a threat to Marco's world? The idea was terrifying, yet the question echoed chaotically in my mind. The fissures between us widened as I stood there, caught between shielding him and revealing my own scars. Don't you see? We're both tangled in this, I urged, taking a step closer, desperate to close the gap between the walls we seemed to be constructing. I'm not your enemy. I'm here because I want to be, not out of obligation. The momentary softness in his expression shattered as he turned to face Alejandro, who had been lurking by the door, seemingly shadowing our every word. You don't know her! Marco shouted suddenly, frustration spilling over. She's one of the few people who actually cares. Alejandro replied, disbelief etched in his features. Do you really think she's here for you or to get something from our family? I flinched, my gut sinking deeper into despair at the revelation that Alejandro now doubted my intentions, just as I had begun to feel a fragile bond with Marco. I'm not asking for anything, I said, my voice trembling as I desperately fought back the tide of panic. I'm just trying to be here for him, but it's all slipping away because of fear and accusations. Fear's what keeps you safe, Alejandro rejoined, his voice biting. You need to remember that, Marco. This isn't just about your feelings. It's about family, heritage, legacy. With a heaviness in my heart, I recognized that theirs was a precious bond steeped in loyalty, but I wondered at what cost. It felt like a duel where emotions clashed viciously. I could sense Marco wavering, caught between his brother's principles and my understanding. Dad needs us both, Marco insisted, his voice breaking with a vulnerability that shattered whatever resolve had been left. And then like a ghostly spectre a cell phone rang, shrieking into the air, raising the stakes higher, the source of my constant fear. Marco's phone lit up, casting an eerie glow on his face. As he stared at it, his expression shifted from confusion to horror, and he turned the device around to show me the screen, a chilling image, and above it, a single line that sent dread cascading through me. Who sent this? He exclaimed, his voice rising as if unable to contain the tempest within him. I leaned forward, my breath hitching, the horizon of trust and suspicion narrowing down to this single moment that felt as if it could implode in an instant. It was the same looming message I had feared. Tell me! He shouted again, his voice echoing in the sterile silence, the desperate panic rising. But then, the noise of the hospital faded away and time froze. The image burned itself into my memory like a scar. The face of a woman I recognized, someone from my past I had tried to escape. The walls I had built to shield my heart started to crumble around me. I knew this was no coincidence. Marco, it's someone I knew before, I stammered, the realization striking me like a bone-chilling wind. She was part of a life I thought I left behind. He looked incredulous then, his mind rapidly processing my words. But before he could react, Alejandro stepped forward, his expression darkening. You need to cut her out, Marco. She's dangerous. This is not just about feelings anymore. This is about survival. At that moment, the magnitude of my solitude sank in. I was caught between two worlds, the darkness of my past clawing at my back while I stood before a future I yearned for, and Marco's gaze flickered with doubt and fear for us both. With emotions raw and fragile, a heavy air hung above us, thick with secrets, lies, and looming danger that stretched relentlessly toward the horizon. The connection we had built moments before felt more fragile than ever, swaying precariously. Finally, Marco took a step away from me, hesitation clear on his face. I need time to think. I felt my heart break as he turned away. The chasm between us had widened, one that I feared could never be bridged again, and as I stood there alone, the shadows lengthened ominously, promising more challenges, more secrets, and far more uncertainty lay ahead. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, but all I could manage was to pull it out, staring at it in disbelief as the next message illuminated the screen, sending shivers racing down my spine. The past has a way of catching up. Watch your back. As the echo of Marco's footsteps faded into the sterile hallway of the hospital, guilt coiled around my heart like a serpent tightening its grip. Every beat resonated with the weight of the choices I had made, the secrets I harbored, and now they threatened to consume the fragile connection we had fought to build. I had walked into a world of light carrying shadows too dark to shed, and the consequences were unfolding before my very eyes. That I leaned against the cool wall, my breath coming in shaky bursts. The fear of losing Marco hardened into something more visceral, a dread that cut much deeper than just the fear of rejection. It was the realization that in the dance of accusations and hidden truths, I had unknowingly placed him in the line of fire. The hospital, once a sanctuary filled with hope, now loomed like a cage, trapping me within these walls of uncertainty. I turned my attention back to my phone, the ominous message still flashing before me, growing more insistent with each pulse of light. I steeled myself and tapped on the blinking screen. "Who are you?" I typed, fingers trembling, my heart racing, desperate for answers, yet terrified of what they might herald. The wait felt interminable, every second filled with a cacophony of dread that echoed in my mind. And then, a reply came, sharp as shattered glass. "Someone who knows too much. Stay away from him." A chill crawled up my spine, dread pooling in my stomach. I felt as if I was perched on the edge of a precipice, peering into an abyss filled with the echoes of my past. I had always thought I could outrun it, escape its grasp, but the more I struggled, the more entwined I became in a web of doom. Suddenly, a faint voice pulled me from the storm of my thoughts. "Is everything okay?" A nurse, a kind-looking woman with gentle eyes and a patient smile, stood in front of me. Her presence was a brief flicker of warmth in an otherwise freezing reality. I nodded too quickly, forcing a smile that felt foreign and brittle. "Just a lot on my mind." "Life can be overwhelming," she said softly, leaning closer as if sharing a secret with an old friend. "But remember, it's okay to ask for help, even if that help comes from unexpected places." There was a sincerity in her eyes that spoke to something deep within me, igniting a flicker of hope amid the despair. "Thank you," I managed, the lump in my throat making my voice shaky. Kindness was a rare gift in moments of crisis, and it felt like a lifeline being thrown into turbulent waters. As she offered a reassuring smile and wandered away, I took a deep breath, allowing myself to embrace the fleeting warmth she provided. Yet the uncertainty loomed over me like a thundercloud about to burst. The reality of my situation pressed heavily against my chest, making it hard to breathe. I found myself slowly walking toward the waiting area where Marco had left. My thoughts were consumed by the look in his eyes, betrayal, distrust, and a shadow of pain that seemed too familiar. I wanted to reach out to him, to explain myself completely, to unravel the truth behind my past so he could see the whole picture, the piece of me that wasn't shrouded in darkness. But would that even change anything? Could I lay bare my soul before him without revealing the beast that hid in the shadows? Before I could lose myself in that spiral, my phone buzzed again, pulling my attention back. This time, it was an unknown number, and I hesitated before opening it. "Meet me where the shadows dance," it read. The message felt both sinister and tantalizing, pulling at a thread inside me. I could choose to ignore it, I knew that. But part of me was drawn to that dark promise, to face whatever remnants of my past had caught up with me. Was this the end of my chance with Marco, or the beginning of another nightmare? Taking one last glance at the door Marco had disappeared through, I made a choice. I wouldn't run anymore. I would face the darkness head-on, if only to find a shred of light in this consuming night. As I stepped outside the hospital, a heavy wind welcomed me, swirling the air charged with the weight of uncertainty. Somewhere in the distance, shadows began to twist and ripple, beckoning to me. The walk toward my past filled me with dread, but I felt an ember of resolve ignite within me. I would confront the source of my haunting and perhaps, in the process, reclaim not only my story but also the chance that love I feared was slipping through my fingers forever. And amidst the swirling shadows, an unexpected revelation flickered, a small light in the brimming chaos. Someone was watching me. Someone who always had. The shadows whispered secrets as I edged through their tendrils, each one pulling me closer to the truth I had long buried. With every step, the chill of the wind seemed to conspire with a sense of inevitable doom, yet I pushed onward, compelled by a desperate need to confront the sins of my past. Memories surged, battling for dominance, highlighting the choices that had led me to this moment where love and darkness entwined in a perilous dance. Finding the abandoned alley where I had first encountered the whispers of my past felt surreal. The dim lighting cast an eerie glow, illuminating pressing edges of graffiti that seemed to scream stories of heartbeats lost amid the urban landscape. It was a fitting backdrop for the tumult that churned within me, and I could feel the air hum with tension. I leaned against the cool, crumbling wall and glanced around, nerves taut. "Is anyone there?" My voice quivered, mingling with the dust-filled air. For several moments, silence was my only reply, amplifying the pulse in my ears. Just as I began to doubt my decision, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man cloaked in darkness and familiarity. "Long time no see," he said, his voice a chilling dagger slipping into my chest. My breath caught as I recognized him. Leon, a ghost from my past. The memories rushed in, vivid and thorned, the soft edges of who I once was colliding with the jagged reality of who I had become. "Why are you here?" I asked, inhibiting the tremor that threatened to reveal my fear. "I thought I was done with you." Leon stepped closer, his expression a mix of smugness and intrigue. "Did you really think you could escape what you owe? You can't erase the past, no matter how hard you try. And now your precious boyfriend is involved. My heart sank. The knot of dread tightened within me. "What do you want from me?" "Oh, it's not what I want, darling." He leaned back, enjoying my discomfort. "It's what you must do to protect him. Information has a way of finding its way into the wrong hands, and I have a few things that could make life very interesting for the two of you." His words hung in the air, menacing yet tantalizing. They twisted the knife already lodged in my heart, pushing me toward a precipice where every choice seemed harrowing. "They'll do anything to keep him safe from you." He smiled, revealing that familiar predatory gleam. "Then you'll want to play along. You know that secrets always come at a price, and those who choose to hide will pay dearly. As the tension thickened, the gravity of his suggestion settled painfully upon me. Would I have to divulge my own secrets to ensure Marco's safety? The chilling thought sent shivers down my spine. The earnestness of my desire to protect him collided with the stark reality of my own potential ruin. I began to wonder if some paths were simply too dark to tread. "I won't let you hurt him," I asserted, my voice trembling with rage and fear. "Don't be so naive." He stepped closer, invading my space, his presence suffocating. "You already have. Don't you see? He thinks he loves you, yet the truth when it surfaces will unleash chaos far greater than you can imagine. And he won't forgive you for it. Not when he knows the woman he cares for was once tied to a monster like me." Panic clawed its way up my throat. "How do you expect me to believe anything you say?" "You're a liar. Am I?" He replied coolly, tilting his head, studying my whirlwind of emotion. "You'll find out soon enough. The clock is ticking, and it won't be long before Marco discovers who you really are. A sudden thought struck me with the weight of a revelation. "You're not doing this just for fun. You need something from me." Leon laughed softly, almost mockingly. "There's always a price to pay, my dear. Nothing is ever free." My hands trembled, and beneath the current of panic, I felt the flicker of determination push through. This confrontation, as dark and twisted as it was, would be my catalyst. I could no longer allow others to dictate my fate or drag me through the shadows of my past. I had to reclaim my power and protect the one thing I cherished more than anything. "Marco, let him go." "You're playing a dangerous game," I said, surprising even myself with the confidence in my voice. Suddenly, a loud commotion broke through the alley like a stunning explosion. I turned at the sound, my heart racing as a group of men were looking, desperate eyes darting around flooded into view. Dread pooled in my stomach as eyes locked onto me, and their intentions were clear. "Hey!" one of them shouted. "There she is! She has to pay for what she's done." Instinctively, I pressed against the wall, my breathing hitching in my throat. All the darkness I thought I'd left behind was crashing back into my life. I caught a glimpse of Leon, his expression unreadable, yet the corner of his mouth crept upwards, as if he relished the impending chaos. Welcome back to the shadows, he sneered, slipping into the dark, leaving me alone to face my demons. In that instant, I realized the threads of my life were unraveling faster than I could stitch them back together. As the men advanced, I understood with a visceral jolt that the stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined. Secrets were no longer safe, and the intensity of their revelation threatened to obliterate everything I held dear. Just as I thought my fate was sealed, a hand grasped my wrist from behind, pulling me away from danger. It was a fleeting moment of salvation from an unexpected ally, but as I turned, my eyes collided with Marco's, wide with concern and confusion. "What is happening?" he asked, worry etching every line of his face. And in that moment, as fear mingled with the love and chaos, I realized all too well that the truth could no longer hide in the shadows. Driven by reckless hope, I opened my mouth to speak, but silence seeped into the air. We were trapped between unraveling pasts and an uncertain future. And with darkness swirling around us, the shadows danced, whispering promises of revelations yet to come. The air was thick with the sting of adrenaline and the weight of unspoken truths as Marco's grip tightened around my wrist. The thud of approaching footsteps echoed like a countdown in my chest. Time seemed to slow, my heart pounding against the confines of fear and urgency. "Please, we need to go," I urged, desperation threading my voice. I could see the uncertainty flicker in his eyes, his mind racing to wrap around the chaos unfolding before him. "What's going on?" "You're scaring me," he replied, glancing apprehensively toward the encroaching group. It was then I saw him, Leon, lurking just beyond the shadows, watching, waiting, reveling in the chaos he had orchestrated. "Trust me, I'll explain everything later, but we can't stay here," I pleaded, tugging at him. As he hesitated, wrestling with the shock of what was happening, the leading figure of the men moved forward. His face was twisted in anger, that raw, misguided fury igniting a fire deep within me. "You can't run from what you've done, Ava! It's time to pay the price. Stop!" Marco shouted, stepping in front of me protectively, though his bravery was shrouded in a growing uncertainty. The fierce loyalty he held was admirable, yet I felt the heavy tide of dread flow through me. He was about to plunge into waters I had fought so hard to keep him away from. "No!" I cried, taking a step back, fear clawing at my throat. "This is my battle, Marco. I can't." But before I could finish, one of the angry men lunged at us, their grim determination echoing Leon's earlier taunts. Marco instinctively pushed me behind him, fury and panic colliding in his demeanor as he positioned himself to shield me. He struggled, grappling with the man, while I darted around them, searching for an escape. The alley's walls loomed like prison bars, and dread constricted my lungs. We were trapped, and the shadows I fought to outrun were advancing, threatening to consume everything I cherished. "Help her!" Marco yelled, adrenaline surging as he fought to keep the man at bay. Danger enveloped him, his bravery igniting something deep within me. I had always wanted to protect him, yet here he was, defending me against a past I thought I could leave behind. "Marco, no!" I screamed again, my heart splintering as I watched him struggle. The very man I was desperate to protect was now embroiled in my chaos, the darkness threatening to pull him under, just as it had done so many times before. With a sudden burst of energy, Marco threw his opponent backward, sending him staggering into the wall. But before we could collectively breathe a sigh of relief, the others surged forward, emboldened by their companion's aggression. "I'm sorry," I whispered to Marco, the weight of my secrets barreling down on me. "I should have told you sooner. I was trying to keep you safe." But he cut me off, eyes blazing. "Safe from what? What are you hiding from me?" The chilling urgency of our surroundings drowned out my words. I had never intended to drag him into this labyrinth of pain, yet here we were, caught mid-spiral with no beacon of light in sight. I could feel the embers of my past reigniting, the consequences of my silence gnawing at me. "Get out of here!" Marco shouted, his voice breaking through my fog of confusion. But there was nowhere left to go. Then, as if fate decided to intervene, the distant wail of sirens began to echo down the alley. The sound sparked a glimmer of hope in my chest, mingling with the dread of what lay ahead. Yet in this moment I was torn. "Marco, we need to move!" I exclaimed, reaching for his hand, fear steadily thickening the air between us. The men hesitated, the sirens drawing ominously closer. Go! I pushed, but he wouldn't budge, his gaze piercing into mine, searching. I'm not leaving you. His defiance ignited a warmth in my chest, but with every second that passed, it became clear that we could cycle through the pain of my past while risking his future. It'll be fine. Just promise me you'll get out of here. With a sudden explosion of frustration, I lashed out, breaking free from him. You don't understand. You can't imagine the things I've done. The darkness is all around us, and if you stay, it will consume you, too. You have to trust me for once. I felt my heart wrench as I spoke the words, the truth of what I had become clawing its way up from the depths of my being. The shadows that had once defined me wrapped their tendrils tighter, as if to claim the innocent flames I had kindled in Marco's soul. Just as I prepared to shove him toward the exit, a loud roar erupted from the entrance of the alley. The flash of blue and red lights burst into view, flooding the scene in stark relief. The men turned, momentarily distracted, and that fleeting moment of indecision became my chance. Marco, go! I yelled, my voice thick with desperation, instinct pushing me toward the chaos. I grabbed his hand, dragging him toward the light of potential safety, but I knew we were still not free. One of the men, still enraged, lunged towards us, but as Marco instinctively pushed me back, stepping forward, a deafening shout commanded the alley. Get on the ground. Right now, the men, caught off guard, began to scatter, confusion overtaking their aggression. But amidst the clamor, Marco turned to look at me, his eyes swirling with a mix of fear and resolve. You'll tell me everything we're safe, right? He asked fervently, his brows knitting together in concern. The question hung heavily between us, but before I could promise the world, before I could fathom the way out of this abyss, a new figure stepped forward from the police line, far too familiar a face I had buried deep in my mind, the bitter taste of my past surfacing once more. Ava. The air rushed from my lungs, and my chest tightened. Here, where I thought I could finally face my demons, the most formidable of them had arrived, standing just yards away, her eyes glittering with revelations. I was paralyzed, caught between my past and present, and the truth I had fought to suppress loomed larger than it ever had before. In that instant, I realized that no matter how deep I buried my secrets, they were never truly gone, they were simply waiting for the moment to rise and reclaim their due. As I stood there, feeling the weight of my past crushing me beneath the shadows, I couldn't help but search deep within my soul. It was a painful gut check as I felt Marco's presence beside me, a stark reminder of the light I was about to lose. Ava's eyes danced with a wicked anticipation, as if she relished every breath of despair that flowed through the air. For what felt like an eternity, time held its breath, the cacophony of sirens fading to a distant thrum. I could see confusion flashing across Marco's face. The flicker of uncertainty betrayed the quiet resolve I had worked to construct between us. It was all unraveling. In this pivotal moment, I was simply Clara, standing at the precipice of a truth born from silence. Would I dare to unveil the darkness that had tainted both our worlds? Ava, I breathed, the name escaping as a ghost, a whisper of past mistakes. My heart raced as the memories enveloped me, a cascade of resentment and fear pouring forth. Every choice I made to shield Marco now seemed like a betrayal, a stitch unraveling in the fabric of our connection. I glanced at Marco, his brow furrowed, determination to understand etched into every line on his face. You thought you could ignore me forever, didn't you? Ava taunted, a victorious glimmer suffusing her words. He deserves to know exactly what kind of woman he's involved with. Each syllable dripped with malice, digging deep into the cracks of my resolve. The tendrils of darkness wanted me to recoil, to hide behind the shadows I called home, yet the flicker of hope emerged too strongly this time. I wouldn't be defeated. Not when it mattered most. No, I said firmly, my voice echoing through the alley as I stepped forward, holding my position against Ava's impending storm. Marco stood resolutely by my side, ready to face whatever truth awaited. I'll face whatever lies ahead, and I will protect what we have. Surprise washed over Ava's features, and I could sense the shift in the atmosphere, a tempest brewing amidst uncertain alliances. But at what cost, Clara? Your past is a noose around your neck, one that will strangle every chance you have. The tension spiraled, a duel of significant stakes. What do you want from me, Ava? I demanded, my heart pounding. You claim to know my past, but I know your cruelty, your confidence rooted in pain, I said, my voice unwavering. Do you get pleasure from this? You may want to use my story to break him, but you're too late. What? Marco interjected, his voice trembling with concern and desperation as he searched my gaze for answers, his dark brows knitting together. The bond we held flickered yet again, this time fanned by my determination to shield him, despite the shadows threatening to consume me. I'm not perfect, Marco, I whispered, my throat thick with emotion. But I've loved fiercely, even in my darkest hours. I've made mistakes, running from the life I once led. It feels too heavy to bear, yet here I stand, fighting for us. I'm here for you, not because of who I once was, but because of who I'm willing to become. I felt a twinge of hope flutter within me, a fragile whisper against the torment raging around. I dared to look at Marco, and fear shattered as I met the warmth in his gaze. It was a reminder of everything I believed in, the chance to rewrite our story, healthily and courageously, unearthing truths that simmered beneath. Ava's expression twisted in frustration, but Marco stepped forward, cornering her with a commanding stare. Enough! You think you can manipulate her? His voice roared with fierce conviction, the uncertainty stripped away, revealing the strength that coursed through him. This isn't just about her past, it's about ours too. Clara's not alone in this. And suddenly, the various dynamics of the moments flowed together like a harmonious melody, uniting our stories. With each syllable, patience sealed itself around me, drawing back the curtain of fear and transforming it into insight. Together, I said, my voice as steady as the ground beneath me. Together, we will face whatever horror your schemes have bound us to. I'll show you. I'll show all of you. Ava's confident facade teetered. Don't you understand? They want to take pity on you both. It doesn't matter what you say now. The past is a claw that cannot be easily evaded. Perhaps, I replied, the edges of my composure sharpening as fresh resolve ignited the very core of my being. But love is greater than any past lurking in the shadows. If our hearts are committed to one another, we conquer. You can't destroy us with your old stories. The clarity of the truth rang like a bell, echoing with newfound courage emanating from my voice. I didn't tremble. I didn't hesitate. I was alive, and the connection between Marco and me glowed brighter. Ava's silence was her greatest weapon turned into an admission of defeat. She could sense our resolve. She knew the tides were turning. The fire crackled, igniting the promise of new beginnings. No! She screamed, throwing her hands in frustration. This is not over. You'll regret this, I'll be watching. And with that, she turned and fled, the shadows swallowing her whole, leaving me breathless in the wake of her threats. Finally, we were left suspended in silence as the adrenaline faded. I saw Marco's gaze lingering on me, awe filled with unspoken words resting in the heart of the chaos. Did you mean what you said? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Every word, I replied, taking his hands into mine, grounding ourselves in the rippling surface of uncertainty. In the distance, the blare of sirens faded into a distant memory, and I stood firm before Marco, heart trembling yet unyielding. Together, I whispered. We'll navigate through this. As the shadows lengthened beyond us, we faced our truth united, stepping forward, hand in hand. In that moment, hope surged under our feet, guiding us down an unexpected road toward the dawn of something bright and new. And with each stride, I found peace blossoming between us, surrounded by the thrumming chaos of life. Because here we were, two souls forged from uncertainty, stepping into the light of an unfurling horizon, hearts intertwined. In the face of everything that had tried to separate us, it was our love that remained, and it was a love fierce enough to weather any storm. Let's walk home, I murmured, a smile breaking across my face, igniting the warmth in Marco's eyes. Together, he replied, the softness in his voice igniting the promise that would echo through every challenge ahead. and in that moment, every piece of the shattered past fell into place, becoming the very foundation upon which we would build our future. A future where shadows may linger, but no longer held the painful power to consume us. As we stepped forward, hands entwined, I understood we had woven our lives together through the darkness, and emerged, victorious, into a bright new dawn.